All right. Well, in the Halitics, I'm Hal Ginsberg. Got Arlen with us for an Arlen Tuesday. How you doing today, Arlen?
But I didn't hear any music though, by the way. I don't know if
I don't know why you don't hear the music. I can't force you to hear the music, and I've tried every single method I know of to send you the music, but you're still not hearing it. So I'm sorry about that. I'll try again. I'll try again after the show.
I don't really need the music because as long as the people out there are listening and hearing it, that's fine with me. I just wasn't sure. So
well, they hear it because if you watch the videos at YouTube, you'll hear it yourself. I've definitely tested that. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Anyway, it feels very much like winter here. I don't know what it's like in Maryland, but this is probably the coldest, snowiest day we've had so far. There's snow all over the ground. It's the temperatures are in the 20s. I wanted to go somewhere today, but I really can't, get on the roads. So it's a totally different thing for a California boy like me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about snow because we got a lot of rain here and there was a little bit of sleet, maybe some snow in the northernmost section of Montgomery County, Maryland, where I live. So I assumed there was snow further north, although my mother told me in White Plains, New York, which is close to where she lives, there was a little bit of snow as well, similar to what we have here. A little snow, a little sleet, but on balance, it was mostly just rain or a little bit of wintry mix at most. But you're saying real snow, is that right?
Real snow. It's all over the ground. When I woke up this morning, I saw it, going through falling from the sky, and the weather is very cold.
Would you say there's enough snow to ski at this point?
Oh, I have no idea. This is the first real deep snow we've had, so I don't know much about skiing. Nancy might know, but I don't.
Are you planning to return now to Monterey? Because this is the time of year, right, when you actually head back. You sort of spend the spring, summer, or at least late spring, early summer into fall, but now it's getting close to wintertime.
Well, this is going to be a little different year because Nancy remembers when her parents brought her to New York City during the Christmas time, and she wants her kids to see that. So we're all going to go just before Christmas into New York City, see the Broadway and the Rockettes and have high tea and all that kind of thing. So, something we've never done before. So that's why we're staying a bit longer. So it won't be until after New Year's that we'll be back in California.
Well, that sounds like fun, Arlen. I hope you enjoy the New York City diversion and maybe check out what is it that we used to do when I was a kid? We would go see the Nutcracker, right, at the New York Ballet. So that kind of expensive. I don't know. You can probably get relatively, I don't know what your financials, I don't know what you want to spend. I mean, I would assume Radio City Music Hall ain't cheap either, but the Nutcracker's always fun if people want to see some kind of holiday season type of culture, shall we say.
From what I'd heard, New York's expensive no matter what you do. It's just very expensive. And, just like parts of California are very expensive. But I think New York may be the most expensive of all.
Playground for the rich, I would say probably it is. I saw the rents in San Francisco when I was living out there, and maybe the houses are more expensive. The condos may be a little pricier, but man, you pay $6,000 plus a month in New York City for a 2-bedroom. I don't even know if San Francisco is quite that pricey for renters. It may be, but it may not. Arlen with us, 240-242-5646. Yeah, you wanted to comment on that price situation.
Well, I'm just saying, the price is one thing. The other thing is the shortage of good homes. And that of course, changes the price and makes it a little bit worse. But we definitely have a shortage situation, and all over the country. In Vermont, it's tough to find houses. In California, it's tough to find houses. Probably in New York and most places like that.
Always great to have Arlen with us. He is, of course, the thought leader. He blogs at thebigpicturereport.com. You can see it right there on your screen. By the way, please do subscribe if you haven't yet done so. And I want to get to that 500 mark. We're inching towards it. We're slouching, as Joan Didion would say, towards it, but we haven't quite arrived. So that would be an exciting milestone for Hal if we get to 500 and get a little shekels. I think they send me a few pennies from the coffers of Google. I hope Google can afford it there. I think they're in Mountain View. Maybe I'm wrong. I have a feeling they could probably afford to send me a couple of dollars every few months, and it wouldn't really impact on their bottom line.
So you'll finally give me a salary. I'll be very happy about that. Yeah.
Well, Arlen, I'll pay you exactly what I pay myself, and we'll see how that goes. At least until I start getting revenue, then we'll have to reconsider our arrangement. But yes, if revenues come in, then my regulars, people like Arlen and Carlos, the great contributors that we have here, will certainly see something of value. It may simply be they're promoted. It may be that everyone gets to know who you are, but I'll try to make something a little more tangible.
I'm not here for the money. Believe me, I'm not here for the money.
240-242-5646. Arlen and I got that. If you were here for the money, you've been waiting a long time for that payday, as am I. All right, 240-242-5646. We'd love to hear from you, by the way. Did test the phones, was having trouble with them when I come to work, which is always hard. Now, Arlen and I were having a little bit of an argument. It's true, we do sometimes fight. I think people have heard it before on this program. And I'm going to start with the story that I think is actually pretty important, although we hadn't really planned to discuss it beforehand. But there is an election right now happening in Tennessee in the rain, maybe some snow there too. It does rain and snow in the volunteer state. Tennessee, Arlen, Afton Ben in a ruby red, blood red Republican district there, I think went for Trump by 20 points. She's within the margin of error. The latest, the only poll I'm aware of, Emerson, a couple days ago, 5 days, a week ago, 2-point lead, 48-46 for the Republican. Your thoughts? Now, I'll just say real quick, I think a big factor here is that Representative Ben, she's in the legislature there, the state legislature. She's pretty populist. She's got a pretty progressive platform, and I think that is appealing to those affordability voters we've all heard about. But Arlen, you don't think it's the policies? Is that right?
No, I'm just looking back to the elections we had a few weeks ago, and I think it's mostly a reaction to how bad things are under Trump. I hope that, she has those policies and people pay attention to them and still allow them to win, because, that's what happened, like I say, in the last election. Toward the end, the spread became even bigger and bigger as people, rejected what's going on with Trump. And if you look at Trump's approval ratings, you can understand why. There's a lot of problems with this country, and Trump is not making them better, that's for sure.
Well, you're right about that, 100% on that point. And I want to delve into just why I think fundamentally the most important thing any candidate can run on if they're trying to get elected, besides their record, is their policies. And why I think Ms. Afton Ben's policies are standing her in good stead. And let's go back just for a moment to that race, the races a few weeks ago on Election Day in New Jersey, Virginia, and in New York City, especially. So I think policy were huge in all of them. I think the reason Zoran Mamdani was able to win, certainly the primary, most importantly, is because his policies were clearly different. He distinguished himself from every other candidate. He said he wasn't going to go to Israel. He said that he would arrest Netanyahu. He said that he was going to do his utmost to make bus riding free within the borders of New York City. He was going to freeze the rent for many rent-stabilized apartments. All of those are important policies for the people in the city of New York, and I think that is precisely why he won that primary. Now, we could add that he was up against a very weak Democrat frontrunner named Cuomo. But there were many other Democrats at that point, some of whom had much greater name recognition than he did. Brad Lander, the I think the treasurer, the comptroller, I'm not sure the title exactly, who, by the way, endorsed Mamdani in the general. But there were many other candidates who had run for mayor before and others. But Mamdani's policies really were distinct. And I think that is the reason he won the primary. We can get into the general in a moment, but let's just stick with that. Your response.
Well, I think you're right. His policies were popular in New York, which is basically a liberal kind of a state, especially New York City. But he also had a lot going for him as far as personality, youth, his articulateness. I mean, compared to, the ordinary blah politician like Cuomo, and of course, Adams was, not really important in the election. So there's a couple things that did it, but I think policies did make a difference. I will agree with you on that. And it just made it that much better that he had such a great personality.
Yeah, they all worked in concert. And I was really focused more on the primary than in the general, although I certainly think the policies were just positive in the general as well. But I really wanted to make the case that in the Democratic primary, Mamdani's policies were distinct and to the voters in that primary better than the ones that the other candidates articulated. And I believe that is the primary reason. Although, yes, of course, handsome, young, very well-spoken, all that helped. No argument.
Yeah.
That's New York. The other two races, I think you have a better argument. Maybe the policies don't matter because Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberg are basically standard issue, cookie cutter type, centrist to center right, Spanberger being more the center right Democrat, not hard right, but certainly not progressive. So neither one had policies that really were striking for a Democrat, either in Virginia or New Jersey. But here's why I think policy mattered. Because the policies that the Republicans were running under were Trump policies. And people don't like Trump policies right now. Trump's policies have done harm to our country. Trump has broken promises to our country. People don't like the police running rampant through the streets of our city, arresting citizens, among others, rousting people out. It's not something that we like. We don't like watching the live stream genocide that continues from Israel and Palestine. And Trump did say, and a big reason, in my opinion, he got elected was he said he was going to end the war with Russia, the proxy war with Russia. That was a policy that was popular. Americans don't want us to be at war with Russia, don't want us to be promoting that horrible carnage there. And Trump said he would end it. And that was a reason he won. But he didn't end it. I can't say he could have necessarily, but he promised he would. And so his policies are not popular now. And Spanberger and Sherrill certainly promised much more of a break from anything Trump would want than the Republicans. So I do think policy was a big deal in those races.
Well, for one thing, Trump promises all kinds of things and he never delivers. I don't know why anybody would take him seriously. He just says whatever, would make him sound good. If he says he's, pro-Israel, if he says he's pro-worker, it just, none of it comes true. He is just who he is. He's Donald Trump and he's for Donald Trump. By the way, there's something you might want to consider and think about too, is if the Democrats do get that Tennessee seat, they'll be that much closer to actually challenging the House of Representatives as far as being the majority party. It is a possibility.
Absolutely. 100% on that, Arlen. That's a good point. I understand that if Ben wins, then the majority will be down to either 1 or 2 for the Republicans. And with Marjorie Taylor Greene stepping down, it may be lost. Because when you look at Thomas Massie, who often votes with the Democrats, I'm not sure exactly how it cuts, but I believe there'll still be, even after Taylor Greene steps down, Republicans would have a one seat majority. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Do you have the numbers there? I
don't have the numbers, but I think I think from what I've heard, it's the Republicans that are actually leaving their jobs and or discouraged about their jobs, just like Marjorie Taylor Greene, because, what kind of a job is it where you have to listen to what Donald Trump says and you really don't have anything that you could say that's different? So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, no, it's not fun if you have any kind of a will of your own, as Taylor Greene does. But I think she's getting out at the right time for her. She could have fought Trump. I wish she had fought him harder. There were ways maybe the Democrats could have reached out to her a little bit. I think there was some self-interest. Apparently, she's going to get her pension. That's a point that AOC made, was some measure of vindictiveness and mean-spiritedness. But nevertheless, accurately, this will help Greene. Now she can retire, get her health care for the rest of her life, I think, or whatever it is they provide, and pension and all that. So she's getting out at a good time for her. I think that's all accurate. I'm just making the point that voters look at the candidates and they say, who's going to help me get what I want? Who's going to do what I want? And and they make that decision by and large on policy. I think that the reason Trump won the elections he won, even though he didn't get a plurality even against Hillary, I think the reasons he won is because people, by and large, found the Democratic policies to be very, very wanting, correctly so, and didn't see much difference between the two, and thought, well, Trump is promising something and Democrats aren't, or the Democrats have proven that they cannot lead, so maybe he'll do a better job. Likewise, now Americans are looking at how bad Trump is and how bad the Republicans are, and they're saying, okay, well, let's give anything is better than what we're going through right now with Trump. So we'll, vote for people like Sherrill and Spanberger. We'll see what happens in Tennessee. Now, this would be a really big deal if somehow Afton Ben wins that election against, I think his name is Van Epps, the Republican. Not sure.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But yeah, that it will be a big thing. I think that the Republicans would get very, very worried, as they should be, about the midterms that will be coming up next year, because, the Trump seems to be falling apart. His policies seem to be falling apart. He talks crazier and crazier, says stupider things more and more, and you have to wonder about, what shape his brain is in at age 79. So. Yeah, things are looking more promising for the Democrats. They're not talking about leaving office. They maybe see some, possibilities for success ahead, for them. So, that I think.
Well, Nancy Pelosi's leaving, but she's in a dark blue district, so that seat isn't going to go to the Republicans no matter what.
Yeah, and she's pretty darn old.
Right. But I'm just saying there are Democrats who are saying they're going to step aside. I think there are a few other. Eleanor Holmes Norton, she's a non-voting representative from the district. She's about 88, 89. She's apparently considering. That's an amazing thing. She's almost 90, Arlen, and she's thinking about maybe retiring.
Yeah, well, Democrats need to think about age. That's for sure. People like Schumer need to go. But I'll still, another thing I think is interesting too, is you're starting to get some Republicans, not a lot, who are challenging Trump, who are going against Trump. And that's a pretty important sign, because it wasn't happening before. Everybody just fell in lockstep with Trump. And now people are starting to think a little bit differently and expressing it.
I agree. And I would say that part of that is, again, the policies are unpopular. That Marjorie Taylor Greene stood up to Trump on policies that are unpopular. She said, we shouldn't be funding Israel when we have so much need at home. I'm an American firster, not America firster, not an Israel firster. She stood up to Trump on the Epstein files. She said, hey, the American people should know who was consorting on Pedo Island. She also said, my district needs the Obama supplements, the Obama subsidies. And so, those are policy issues of Trump slashing healthcare. That's not what people want. So I think the policy is king or queen or whatever ruler you want to choose when it comes to,
by the way,
elections.
I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene is just going to go home and vacuum and wash laundry. She's going to be out there. She might run for something. She'll probably certainly be able to get a spot on Fox News or one of the major media. So we'll be seeing a lot of her ahead, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think she's a business owner too. She has some sort of a company that she started or she runs in northern Georgia, northwest Georgia, which is, I believe, where her district is actually on the border of Tennessee. We're talking about the Tennessee race, which is Nashville environs. So not too far. Nashville sort of north central, but not that far from Georgia, actually. I'm looking at the membership of the House for those who are interested. So right now, there are 219 Republicans seated. There are 213 Democrats. There are 435 seats. So if you need 218 to have a majority, right now there are 219 Republicans. If they don't win, if the Republican loses the race today, then that stays at 219 because the Republican had vacated the seat. There are 3 vacancies. That vacancy will be filled by a Democrat. There would still be 219 Republicans, 214 Democrats. When Marjorie Taylor Greene vacates her seat, that'll bring the number of Republicans down to 218. Still a one representative majority for the Republicans. And I doubt they would lose Taylor Greene's seat. That's a very conservative district in Georgia. So they're going to probably maintain a 2-seat majority in the Congress. Although there may not be a special election. There won't be a special election, I doubt, for Taylor Greene because there's an election coming up this year. So there may or may not be. I don't know how the rules are there. But either way, there will not be a Democratic majority in Congress until at the earliest next Congress after the elections in November of 26. That's where we are.
By the way, I was just saying about the Democrats need to lose some of their leadership who are too old or too stodgy. And I think that the Speaker of the House on the Republican side is just turning out to be horrible. He looks terrible when he speaks. He doesn't seem to know what he's doing. He just did whatever Trump wants him to do, and closing the government, and he still wants to avoid the Epstein files. So he's very bad for the Republicans. I think he's not going to be popular, and he may be out of there for in a little while. We don't know.
Mike Johnson, you're referring to, and he is certainly not an impressive character, although he does stick to his talking points, which garners viewpoints in Washington, no question about it. Just real quick before we move on to actually Israel-Gaza, wanted to just highlight Afton Ben. We don't know what's going to happen tonight. My understanding is that the Republicans are cautiously, nervously optimistic they'll hold the seat. It is a very significantly unbalanced seat, district. In other words, the number of Republicans is much, much higher. But the Republican brand is not doing well these days. Here are some of the policies that Afton Ben has promoted. Taxing billionaires, cracking down on corporate wrongdoing, which is the opposite of Trump, who just, by the way, pardoned a private equity billionaire who had apparently embezzled and stolen hundreds of millions of dollars. And Trump just pardoned him. I mean, this is who Trump is. So those are policies people hate that. And she's saying, no, that's not me. That I'm against that. Supporting workers. I mean, these are vague. They're general. I don't know the specifics, but there's something. And she's speaking out against Israel, which those are all popular. Those are what voters want. I think this is a big reason, Afton Ben. Now you talk about being attractive, young. She is. That's not the right picture. There we go. So she fits that mold as well. So maybe populist economic policies accompanied by an attractive face and youth, which worked so well for Mamdani, will also work for Afton Ben. We can only hope.
Yeah. What you just mentioned about Trump pardoning this Honduras official who, the jury gave 45 years in prison to, and Trump just pardons him for no great reason. And Trump is making such a big thing about drugs in America. We have to go into Venezuela and blow up everything. And yet, if drugs are so important, why did he pardon this guy?
Yeah, two pardons, right? One was this Honduran strongman who was a drug dealer convicted, and the other was the private equity pardon of a corrupt billionaire here who was recently had been convicted, defrauding maybe thousands of people. So we're actually talking about two pardons where Trump is demonstrating he has no respect for law and order, no respect for justice, at least if the criminals are folks that support him, right? That he likes, that have done things that have benefited him. Let me just put this up. David Gentili is the executive. Maybe he's not a billionaire. I don't know. Go ahead.
More telling than anything, he's given a lot of pardons away, but I think the worst was just pardoning everybody on that was in the January 6th riot. I mean, that was just horrendous. These guys are still going out and doing terrible things. But that was, I think, one of the worst injustices I've ever seen on referring to pardons.
Yeah, it's interesting. You and I don't always see things the same way, and this is another example. I'm much more troubled by Trump giving a pardon to a private equity executive who defrauds investors of $1.6 billion. Many of them were these were life savings. These were not, rich investors necessarily, people who'd been scammed much the way Bernie Madoff had scammed folks. I find this more troubling than commuting or whatever he did, pardoning many working class Americans. These were not billionaires. They were not multimillionaires who were very upset, very angry at Congress, some for legitimate reasons, others not so much. Wasn't good. I don't think they should have been necessarily pardoned, but I'm always on the side of the underdog. And the people who are so angry at Congress are underdogs. This guy is a corporate creep, and I find the fact that Trump pardoned him despicable. Likewise, a Honduran strongman who profits from selling drugs in this country should remain in jail far more than, say, a low-level drug offender.
I agree with you. I think those kind of the pardons that you're mentioning are really horrible, and so many of them, Trump will find a way to profit from them and get some investments that he likes. But I think and you combine that with the January 6th ones and all the others that he's given. I don't know that he's given any legitimate pardons. I think he even pardoned Rudy Giuliani. I mean, come on.
Yeah, he's terrible. Look, Trump is awful. Trump is really, I used to say I didn't see that much difference between Trump and Harris. And I will say this, Trump is worse than I thought he would be. This second term, the first term, I don't think he was as bad as many said. I think there was some Trump derangement syndrome there. This has been, and there were things I hate about what Trump did. I always said the treatment of immigrants was the worst thing he did. Now the worst thing, in my opinion, is the support for Israeli genocide. That said, it's so awful what we're doing to our immigrant population here. And yeah, I mean, I will not defend Trump. Trump is terrible. I blame the Democrats, though, and say it's their fault that we have him because he is who he is. And if you're not going to fight for poor, struggling, working people, then they're going to find a strong man, or at least a perceived strong man who claims to be on their side.
Well, we both agree that the Democrats need to do a whole lot more, but Trump is no better for sure, and actually a lot worse. And I think the first term he had some establishment people that were kind of holding him back a little bit of a guardrail. Now he's just got all his people in there. Everybody is loyal to him. The Justice Department is in his pocket. He's managed to. I don't know if he's getting some advice from certain people like Bannon or whatever, but he's pretty much, insulated himself from the rest of the country.
Arlen, one of your faves is Thom Hartmann, but another one of your faves is Robert Reich. I think this is the time to put his words on screen. I think you would agree with that. And this is why I blame the Democrats. True freedom cannot exist without economic security. People who are hungry and out of a job are the stuff of which dictatorships are made. So that's why I blame the Democrats, because they have not fought for poor, struggling, working people and their policies. And when I say they, I'll be very, very clear who I mean. Bill Clinton, Robert Rubin, Larry Summers, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. Their policies have not made life better for working people. They have left many, far too many Americans hungry and out of work. And that is why many have turned to Donald Trump, in my opinion, well, my humble opinion.
I think FDR was really the last great president we've had in this country, because he really did, go all out for the working people, with Social Security and Medicare and all this, kind of stuff that he really wanted to help working people and unions and all that. And it seemed to work for a long time until the more wealthier billionaires kind of took over.
Arlen, I'm going to give this control of the show over to you, not literally, but figuratively. You choose the next story. You shared two with me. I wasn't sure whether you really wanted to talk about Gaza. You said we don't have to talk about it, but this is an October 23rd New York Times piece. What happened in Gaza might be even worse than we think. That, or we can talk about the latest from Thom Hartmann, in which he addresses the morbidly rich. So where do you want to go? Middle East?
Yeah, let's go.
Hartmann.
Let's go with the latter. I think, what he's saying about the morbidly rich, we know that rich people have a lot of control in this country, but what's making it different now, I think, is that they are isolating themselves from the rest of the public. They're going only to, their locked gate communities and going to their restaurants that only rich people can go to. And then they're pretty much ignoring what else is happening in the country. And I think that's certainly going to, you could see it. I mean, so many people are hurting, and that's, that's something that has to be addressed and done something. And one thing about what Hartmann says too is that we were able to make that different and change it a couple of different times in our history. I think he said the 1940s and some other year. So he is a little bit optimistic that we can change this, but it certainly won't be easy. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting piece. And I think Hartmann's strengths and weaknesses, which I've often detailed here, and my view of what they are both on display here. But here's the piece. I thought that was a really good summation, what you said, Arlen. And as you described it, I was more convinced by Hartmann, or by you, than I was by Hartmann. But no question, this issue of isolation is huge. These billionaire types have basically set themselves apart from everyone else in our society, except for maybe themselves. You mentioned some really interesting places, the restaurants, they don't even use the same airports. It used to be they would sort of whisk themselves into first class, or maybe their charter jet, but they still have to fly out of LAX or SFO or where have you. But now they've got apparently their own private airports. They have these yachts, these super yachts that only other billionaires are ever on. And Hartmann makes another point, which is the only non-billionaires these people even see are their servants, who are, going to say what they want to hear because they want to keep their job and get their big tips and what have you. And even the servants have it better than many Americans. So it's a terrible, terrible situation. Yeah.
There's another thing that Hartmann mentioned is that they don't really care how much the money affects the country, because they just want more and more and more. It's like an addiction. They want to see if they can get the most money. They don't really care if it takes away from everybody else. And I think, it's like a character defect or something, that, an addiction that's hurting the rest of us.
I think he's right. I mean, we're looking at, sort of a French Revolution, pre-French Revolution society we live in right now, where people are more and more sacrificed so that the marquis can get his chocolate. So it is a terrible, circumstances that we're in. And he describes it very well, and I agree with all these points. Acquire vast media properties just to convince ordinary people that deregulating toxic businesses, cutting taxes on them will benefit, the average American. I don't think Americans are persuaded. I think, this is where I think you and I disagree a little bit. I think a big part of the problem is that the Americans don't really have a place to go that will champion them. But the result has been clear: collapsing wages, millions without health care, skyrocketing poverty, underfunded schools, rampant gun violence, although that's a little exaggerated maybe because crime rates, as I understand it, have been dropping. Crumbling infrastructure, true. Deadly pollution, true. Poisons, chemicals in our food and water, and a middle class gutted and left gasping. And as Reich points out, FDR made the case that without a strong, vibrant middle class, without poverty, without hunger, democracy cannot survive.
The last sentence you said, I think, is key. What we're losing most of all is democracy. Without democracy, we can't change things. We can't change policies and positions and parties, because right now the Supreme Court has given all the rich people all the money that they want to spend, and they can buy politicians without any problem. So we have no democracy. If the American people like a certain policy, if it's not something that the billionaires like, it's probably not going to happen.
Yep, that is 100% right. Now, Hartmann, though, to his discredit, unlike Halitics, doesn't provide solutions, doesn't provide recommendations in this piece. He says he will, though. He will. But you're not constrained. What do you think? What would you recommend as ways to address this problem? And can it be? Can ordinary citizens at this point even anyway grab our democracy back?
Yeah, I'm not too optimistic about that, Hal. The future does not look right. There's, like I say, if the billionaires still have all the power and won't give any of that democracy up, then I don't see how things are going to change. And of course, the Supreme Court is a major factor in that too. And we have such a bad Supreme Court right now that nothing's going to change on that part for a long time. So it's very pessimistic. I feel very pessimistic about the future of this country right now.
Well, Bernie campaigned, I believe, in part in 2016 especially, claiming that billionaires shouldn't exist. And I agree with him. They shouldn't. That seems to be the exact policy that Hartmann embraces, right? Billionaires shouldn't exist. And Hartmann did support Bernie for president. Why haven't we seen the Democratic Party embrace that position? Rather, in, say, the 2024 DNC, you actually had the governor of Illinois bragging that he, unlike Trump, was a real billionaire. Isn't that the wrong message if we want to take the country back from the billionaires?
Yeah, it is the wrong message. I mean, if you have billionaires running everything and they have all the control over everything, then you're just not going to get anywhere. I'm looking for something really good to happen, but I don't know how it's going to happen. And as far as why the Democrats don't get more progressive, I think the reason is because they're also dependent on the donor class. They're the ones that they also have to buy politicians and put big money into elections to have a chance. And so that's what's really changed a lot over the past few decades, the role of money in elections and politics. And I think the Democrats are just afraid to give that up.
It's awful. It really is. I mean, they're greedy. They want their golden parachutes too. They view the government as a slot machine as well. It's really, really, really bad. You mentioned that Hartmann makes the point that in the past we have confronted malefactors of great wealth successfully. And he identifies three former presidents, Grover Cleveland, who was also a great Philadelphia Phillies pitcher, Teddy Roosevelt, and his cousin FDR. And what struck me about this, Arlen, is these are really, really ancient history, pretty much. I mean, virtually no one even alive today remembers FDR. You'd have to be in your late 80s to remember FDR at all. And you'd only just remember, his voice or reading in the paper that he died. He died in 1944, I believe. Maybe it was 45. So
Maybe 45.
It was 45. So given that fact, isn't that a pretty strong indictment of today's Democrats?
Well, I don't know what the Democrats are going to do about it, but certainly we're not going to find those kind of presidents anywhere. And you're right, that's ancient history. So, the Democrats are going to have to look real closely at their donor class and, can they, wean themselves away from that? Bernie tried. Bernie didn't take money from corporations. There are a few progressive politicians that say they won't take money from, corporations and billionaires and all that. And if the Democrats are going to, have the policies that you want them to have, and we all want them to have, that they can't do it under the current conditions where they're dependent on all these rich corporations and billionaires.
Yeah, they won't. I mean, they just won't do it. I think, to be fair to the Democrats, you said you thought FDR, I think you said he was our best president or our best economic president. You have to go back to him. I mean, I think
really one.
Lincoln devotees would have an argument with you, but certainly FDR is right there at the top in my pantheon of presidents as well. I think LBJ was a truly economic populist president, and he deserves a little more credit. I understand there's issues with the Vietnam War escalation and other personal matters that may have cost him his place as one of the great presidents. But in terms of fighting for poor, struggling, and working class Americans, he's right there with FDR, in my opinion. I think Hartmann could have thrown him a bone mentioning the Great Society and the War on Poverty, which were two of his hallmark programs. But at least since the late 60s, we have not seen a president who's really clearly been on the side of the working class. And it's tragic. It's been a tragedy for our country.
Yeah.
And the world.
I agree with you on LBJ. I think he was had the potential to be a really great president. He had the ideas. He knew what he was doing. But, unfortunately, he had Vietnam to contend with, and he did it poorly, and it ruined him, and he couldn't stick around for a second term because of it.
It's sad too, because he knew it was a mistake. He didn't want us to be there. He never thought it was a good idea. But he had tremendous pressure from the Democratic hawks led by Scoop Jackson and others who had told him, and there was a guy named Joe Alsop who was a very, very hawkish commentator at the Washington Star, I believe, and also the Washington Post, or the reverse, I don't know, one way or the other, who were pushing very hard for war, to escalate in Vietnam. And, LBJ, I think what he should have said to Scoop and the others were, yes, vote for civil rights, and I will absolutely follow your preferred policies in the Far East. And then he should have stiffed him. He said, oh, yeah, thanks a lot for voting for doing the right thing when it comes to voting rights. And now, we're getting out of Vietnam. Oh, I'm sorry if you don't like it. Oh, sorry. That's what I think he should have done. But hey, I have a different view of honor among politicians.
Wars are very powerful and important, and just have to look at the Iraq War. It was the same kind of thing. It turned out to be a disaster. There was no reason to have that war. And yet, people, jumped all over the idea. Yeah, we got to do that. We got to get, Hussein and all that. But, it was just, wars are just like that. American people rally around the president. And in most of the cases since World War II, we've been on the wrong side. We haven't really accomplished anything good.
You're correct. Tragically, again, Arlen. All right, here, I mentioned you see the good side or the strengths of Hartmann, but also the weaknesses. This, to me, is just such a massive failing on Hartmann's part, where he says, thanks to decades of Republican deregulation and Reaganomics tax slashing. That's fair. It's true. Republicans have championed deregulation. The Reagan tax cuts were awful, but he only targets Republicans. There's not one word of criticism against Democratic deregulation. The repeal of Glass-Steagall, which of course broke down the barriers between investment banks and commercial banks that Bill Clinton signed. He doesn't mention that, which was a major factor in the 2008 financial crash. He doesn't mention that after Obama took office, he continued the Bush policy of bailing out the big bankers, not underwater homeowners. There are many other examples I could provide of democratic malfeasance and corruption that benefited the billionaire class. But Hartmann doesn't mention any of those. And I think he loses an extraordinary amount of credibility when he does that. He also loses any ability to reach across the aisle to disaffected Republicans and independents.
Well, you're right. The Democrats did a lot of those things and made some very poor choices. But it was the Republicans who were pushing and leading all of those things, deregulation and cutting taxes for the rich. I don't think the Democrats were leading on those things, but they probably felt they didn't have a lot of choice because, all the rich people and the corporations, wanting things a certain way. So like we said, FDR was great, but after that, the Democrats just didn't have the strength, and they just had to worry about. It was just they just couldn't do it.
Don't you think, though, accepting for this discussion that the Republicans are clearly definitively worse when it comes to policies that benefit the wealthy and hurt everybody else, accepting for the purpose of this discussion that that's accurate, and I don't know that I think it is, but I don't know that I don't think it is. Even assuming that's true, shouldn't Hartmann give a sentence to pointing out how Democrats have also failed, how Democrats have also betrayed the American people, even if not to the same degree? Wouldn't that be a fairer, more accurate, more complete picture that he would be drawing?
Yeah, it would be. But at the same time, you got to understand that Thom Hartmann writes lots of things every day. He writes books practically every month. And I'm sure he does mention a lot of things that you're saying and criticizes the Democratic Party. I'd be surprised if he didn't. But I think there's no doubt about it that the Republicans are the ones that have championed all these anti-American things like tax cuts and deregulation and anything that benefits rich people. So I don't know. I'd have to see other writings of Thom Hartmann, and I have a feeling he would have some criticism of the Democrats also.
Here's what Hartmann writes about those great presidents of 100, 150 years ago. All confronted their era's mentally ill hoarders, broke their power, taxed their fortunes, and built the foundations for a middle class that became the infrastructure of American stability. Now, he says, that responsibility falls to us. I find that to be an incredibly frustrating statement. To me, he should say, now that responsibility falls on the Democratic Party to campaign foursquare in support of pro-worker, pro-poor, pro-middle-class policies so that we have someone good to vote for and so that the American people truly have a choice. It can't be on us. How does the responsibility fall on us? We don't have the power. We can't pass laws. So it seems to me, if he's going to say it falls to us, it falls to us to elect better people than we've been electing. But how can we elect better people if they don't run or they're not supported by the parties?
I think, Thom Hartmann is just trying to encourage us, to make us feel hopeful. But you're right. The people by themselves don't have much going for them compared to how much money the other side has and how things are going. So wealth inequality is such a big thing. So yeah, I think Thom Hartmann would not disagree with the things you're saying. I don't think. But
Arlen, how annoying am I? How difficult is it to do a show with me where I'm like, you come up with these articles that are well written, persuasive, and then I'm like poking holes? I mean, how much does that irritate you? It must drive you. How can you stand it? I couldn't stand. I could stand it too, but I think a lot of people must find it very irritating, to be honest with you.
I can't speak for other people, and I don't feel like I want to, rate you, give you a grade or anything like that. I mean, you have your point of view, and that's fine. Sometimes you, keep going on too much about them, but other than that, I think you're doing a pretty good job, I think.
And a C minus. Thanks, Arlen. No, I appreciate it. I feel bad. That I rake you over the coals. I to the extent I do, I feel terrible about it. But I see what Hartmann and Reich do that I find so frustrating is that I think they create this binary world where Republicans are just flat out evil and Democrats, yeah, they have a few flaws, but on balance, they're good. And if we just all get on the Democratic train, everything will work out. I know that's shorthand and that doesn't fully capture their views, but I think it ultimately is what they boil down to. And I just fundamentally think that's A, wrong, and B, very counterproductive and the wrong message I want them to give. So I get very frustrated by it.
Understandably, and I'm frustrated by it too. And my hope is that as we get closer to the next election, that the Democrats will maybe start changing some of their policies. Start pushing more for Medicare and health insurance and giving the SNAP benefits back to poor people, all those kind of things. More progressive policies. I'd like to see that. I think it would be smart of them to do that, especially in contrast to what Trump is doing. So, I'm not going to give up on the Democrats. They have a lot of work to do, but I think they're still a lot better than the other party.
Well, I think Afton Ben's campaign suggests that maybe they're following your suggestion. I think there's a recognition that economic justice policies are the way to go, which we also saw in the Mamdani campaign, and we're seeing in Graham Plattner in Maine and some other progressives that I can't identify in this moment.
Well, after the last election, the Democrats really have to start thinking a little bit differently, kind of wake up a bit, because, it was a disaster. We ended up with who we then ended up with, partially, like you say, because of Democratic policies. And, the Democrats really have to rethink where they're at and find ways to get a little bit more progressive and worker-oriented than they are now.
Thom Hartmann takes on the billionaires. I agree with his criticism of them and the problems that concentrated wealth and power have created in our society. But how do you respond then to this feel-good story, this tech titan, Michael Dell, putting, I guess, out 250 times 25 million. I think that's I don't know. 25 times 25 is 625. Is that $6.25 billion? I believe it is, Arlen. He's going to put out there $6.25 billion. Is that does that kind of tell you, no, it's great to have billionaires because look, they take all their money and they give it to poor people?
Well, that's pretty rare. In fact, this is the first I've really heard about this thing, so I don't know that much about it. But $250 is not going to really change a whole lot of people's lives. I wouldn't think, but I think it's a good thought. It's a good idea, and it's worth pursuing. We'll have to see. I don't know that much about it.
I have the same reaction as you. It's not going to make much difference. It's not going to do much to change wealth and income inequality, if anything. And it's kind of a sop. It's just like, hey, it's like the guy, the Marquis. I mentioned the Marquis earlier from A Tale of Two Cities in the pre-revolutionary France, throwing a few Louis out of his brougham, his stagecoach, while I guess it wasn't a stagecoach, but his coach, his fancy coach, to the family of the child that he had just run over. I mean, I think that's kind of where we are right now. And this is kind of a way to avoid a populist insurgency that demands that he pay much higher taxes, which is, I think, the obvious answer. See, I thought like Hartmann's like, well, it's, the solutions are complicated to this terrible problem. It's going to require me to write another column. Why not just say, hey, raise the marginal tax rates back to where they were during the Eisenhower administration and FDR to 90%, 93%.
Well, I don't know if voters would go for that, but I think you're on the right track.
Well, they wouldn't, but Congress can do it, whether the billionaires like it or not. They should do it.
Well, Congress has a long way to go, and it'd be nice if they, start doing things like that. But when you come right down to it, you're not going to see Donald Trump or Elon Musk or many of those other billionaires doing what the Dells are doing, because like Tom had talked about, it's like a disease, like an addiction to keep getting more and more money and not caring about anybody else and just hoarding billions of dollars. So I wish there were, more people like, the Dells and maybe, Bill Gates started to do things like that and probably still is. But it's going to take a lot more than that. It'll take some real good policies.
Well, this is the Trump account. Apparently, Trump is sort of, I don't know that he's giving money. He's like the least charitable person ever. You mentioned he probably won't be giving any money. I would be surprised if he did, unless it was a big splash and he was doing it just to get positive media attention, which wouldn't be that big a surprise. But otherwise, no, he is the most ungenerous person. But he did create these so-called Trump accounts where he wants, I guess, young people, you seed them with a little money, and then they accumulate tax-free. The theory, I guess, is you invest the money in the stock market. Hopefully, it goes up. Of course, it also benefits investors who have a lot more money. I don't like it. I mean, to me, the way you address poverty is you just say we're not going to have poor people. We're going to make sure, not that we're going to put them in a van and take them out into the countryside and dump them. No, we make sure that everyone has a house, and we give them housing allowance, and we give, we have food, etc. for everybody. That's, to me, the answer. But this is more the idea. Well, there's the deserving poor and there's the undeserving poor, and we're going to give you money, and then if you make something of yourself, that's great. And if you don't, well, it's your fault that you're living under a bridge. I mean, that to me is
certainly a lot of things that can be done to change the way the system works now, and the system, works. It all goes toward the rich, and especially somebody like Donald Trump. Although he would like to have his name on everything, and including that particular policy. But there's got to be many ways to even things out a little bit on the inequality, and I hope the Democrats think of some good ones.
Arlen, we're pretty much at the end of the hour, so I think maybe we'll just call it a program. I have to do my tutoring on Tuesdays, as you know. I mentioned before, we had a lot of other stories we didn't get to. I just briefly wanted to ask you about the governor's race in California next year. And I know we've talked a little bit about, I think, some of the candidates, including Katie Porter. Was she the one? She's been in the news lately. She's getting some negative attention. I want to just briefly broach that with you before we hang up. But has she been your choice or was she your choice at one point for governor?
Oh, I like her. I've always liked her. I'm not sure what's going on now that makes her a little less popular. But that particular race is over a year away, and it's a little too early. I haven't seen that much coverage.
Is it? It's not over a year. It's next year, right? It's just coming up, the primary. Is it not for governor?
No, well, I know, but the general election, it'll be November.
Right, but there's a primary in June.
Yeah, well, there'll be a lot more tension on that, and I certainly will be interested in what I see. But there's one other thing I think we haven't mentioned: how all these things are going on in the world. Nothing about Epstein and the Epstein files. I think maybe Trump is purposely doing that, raising all these big issues just to get people's minds off of the Epstein files. But I think there's like 30 days until Bondi has to release the files, and then things will probably heat
She'll
up quite a lot.
probably redact. There'll be a lot of redactions. A lot of names won't be held. No, you're absolutely right, Arlen. The really horrific saber rattling against Venezuela, which again most Americans are totally against. We don't want a war with Venezuela. This is another issue I think Democrats could make more hay with, but I don't know. They may be. I don't want to be unfair to them. I think Chris Murphy, the senator from the U.S. senator from Connecticut, was on Face the Nation maybe 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, and he was very, very critical of CNN. Actually, he was very critical of what Trump's threats and his killing, extrajudicial killing of fishermen and the like is horrible. This is a lawless president. We're really imploding, I think.
Yeah,
I wish I had some good news. I don't have it.
I saw some polls just the other day, and Trump is really losing ground on foreign policy. He's losing ground on even immigration. People disapprove of his immigration policies also, and its crime policies also. Basically, Trump is losing popularity, which I think is a darn good thing.
Well, it is, but again, the Democrats need to use that to their advantage by, I believe, promoting alternative policies and being very clear and specific what they are. Now, they may not need to, because at this point, it looks like there's just going to be a blue wave. I would not be surprised. But look, the Republicans will play every dirty trick in the book. I'm not convinced we're going to have free and fair elections. You have to overcome a lot of obstruction by the billionaire class that wants only their candidates in power and believes that they have the divine right to determine who governs. So it's going to be a tough call. Democrats really, I think, need to step up, and they need to stand with Foursquare of the American people. We'll see if that happens. I'm not optimistic.
Well, something, how we actually do agree on quite a bit. I think, the things you're saying, I have no great dispute with. I may do it a little bit differently than you, but yeah, we both want the Republicans to stop doing what they're doing and the Democrats to start talking about doing much better and progressive pro-worker things.
Arlen, it's great to have you on. No, I agree. I know we have similar goals, and we see an ideal or a better society. We have similar views of what that would look like. It's just I'm less sanguine than you when it comes to the likelihood that the Democrats are either interested in or have the desire to bring us to that better place.
Yeah, you have some very strong views on certain things, but overall, they're reasonable, and you're very knowledgeable. So, as far as your grade, I really give you a B.
I appreciate that. I thought I was going to get that B plus, but you know what? Even the B, although in today's grade inflation, I don't even think a B is considered very good. I think it's kind of weak, unfortunately. I mean, if you saw the GPAs my son's got given, I mean, you'd have to say, wow, I guess college has gotten pretty easy, is the only thing I could say about that. All right, Arlen, it's always a pleasure. Will you be on? But, I put the final, kind of the goodbye, or, this was the opening thumbnail, but the closing as well. But before, are you going to be back next week? Are you going to be on the road? Where are you going to be? Are you going to phone in, or are we going to have to wait for a few weeks to get you back on?
I mean, I hate to say it, but I actually have an important dental appointment that I can't get out of for next Tuesday. So, if there's another day or whatever, I'll be back.
Oh, so you will not be on the road though next week?
No.
All right. Well,
the following week, I think we'll be on the road.
We'll work out another day if we can. Just stick with me for a second after I close the stream. By the way, can you hear the music now?
No.
Wow, and that was pretty loud too. I don't know what that's about, folks, but I know you heard it. I'll be back tomorrow for a Wednesday, middle of the week Halitics. Arlen will have next week. Thanks so much.